Are you ready to go all in?
Let's do this. Let's do this. Let's do this.
And welcome to the All In Practice Growth Podcast. The podcast brings you a different perspective on the medical and dental industries. I'm your host, Shane McElroy, and luckily today I'm joined by my co-host, Blake McClellan, with a big smiley face. How are you, Blake?
Good. Happy, what is today? Wednesday? There we are.
Yeah. They melting together on you?
Yeah.
You doing okay, man? Usually I'm used to that big smile of yours.
Yeah, just recovering from a long week. So yeah, just busy and yeah, we're here. We're surviving.
Well, hopefully he'll amp it up
the
more.
Cold weather too has me in fall vibes going.
Cold, it's like 75 degrees.
Yes, but when I wake up, it's like 65 in my house because it's so cold outside in the morning.
God,
I haven't turned on the heater yet. Not there yet.
Delicate flower, my friend. Delicate flower over here. But no, I want to have Blake on this episode because our guest today is going to be talking a little bit about AI and integration into dental practices. So without further ado, let me introduce somebody I've known for a little while from the DSO world, Dr. Adam Burr. Welcome to the All In Practice Growth Podcast. How are you, sir?
I am excited to be here today, Shane and Blake. Looking forward to the discussion.
No, 100%. Thank you for jumping on. And if you wouldn't mind just kind of starting out and filling everybody in on kind of your background, who you are, kind of what you're doing right now at a very high level.
Sure. So I am a dentist by trade. I've been out practicing for 15 years. Most of my career has been in the DSO world. So I've worked with large DSOs as a practicing doctor. During that experience, I gained additional experience teaching, developing content, implementing clinical programs. That merged into practice operations and management and leadership development. That led to a 4-year role with another large DSO where I was their chief dental officer. Once that position, once that ended, I bought my own private practice where I live here in Salt Lake City. That was last year. And I opened my own consulting services as well. So I work with DSOs now on operations and clinical program development, as well as AI program integrations and rollout. I consult with AI companies on the clinical strategy side, as well as product testing and development. And my own private practice is built on what a practice today can look like when AI is the foundational component of it, leveraged through all of the newer clinical systems that exist today to be proactive in terms of patient care, with the goal to hopefully end the restorative cycle that we end up in dentistry with patients, and instead create a proactive cycle of avoiding the surgical and permanent stuff that we do with patients. I just love to avoid it altogether. So that's what I'm hoping to build out of an AI-based practice.
Where does that appetite come from? Like, what was the genesis of, hey, I'm going to adopt AI? Because you look at dentistry, as I always say, it's kind of a pioneer in tech. You know, you look at 3D printing is probably the easiest thing to talk about, but 3D imaging as well.
Sure.
You're a pioneer here. You're probably not surrounded by a lot of other people that are doing this. You're definitely pushing the industry forward, I think, with what you're trying to do. But where did that start? Where did that come from?
So I've always felt, even since dental school, I had some very forward-thinking educators that we can be more preventive-based in our dentistry. And it's just stuck with me. But financially, it never made sense. And that's unfortunate because the model for patients has always been reactive surgical dentistry, intervention and restoration-based dentistry. And that's not a bad thing, right? Patients need it, and they will always need it. We're never going to get away from needing those clinical skills. However, I felt that after seeing what I saw in the role that I was with a few years ago, looking out at the horizon of AI-based dental evolution, coupled with the technology that was already available with 3D imaging, 3D radiology, the way that AI and radiology was combining through interpretation and identification of conditions, along with some of the most up-to-date materials that we have available in dentistry, I felt that 2024 will be the year that we look back on and say dentistry was able to be different because all of the foundational blocks were in place to give patients something they never had the ability to do and doctors never had the ability to implement. So I felt like that was the year for me to jump off into this and create this passion project that is just that forward-looking, proactive dentistry, avoiding the reactive care as much as possible.
Now, you said you've got your private practice. You sit in the DSO world while you're also, consulting for an AI company. But I want to start with your private practice, and how specifically you're integrating AI. Like hyper specifically, is it clinically? Is it from a marketing perspective? Where are you integrating all this in right now?
Yeah. So some of the clinical, okay, so it starts with where I think it's most foundational and where AI is the most furthest developed is actually in the clinical patient interface. So for instance, x-rays, right? We all know that there are 4 major players in the x-ray space that help doctors interpret and patients understand what's going on in a dental x-ray. To me, that's foundational. It gets rid of one of the biggest pain points that has existed in dentistry since x-rays existed, which is patients don't understand it. Doctors can't really explain it. There's a low confidence level in early lesion detection, and so we watch things get worse. That's key. All of the voice-based interactions are now interpreted through AI, so all of my charting of conditions, my recording of like periodontal charting is all done through AI-based solutions. My notes are all taken and tabulated and generated through AI. A lot of the clinical systems that then I demonstrate to patients with like my 3D scanners have significant AI interpretations and modeling built into it. So all of that creates this now patient-facing diagnostic review of conditions, which takes my subjectivity out of the demonstration and puts it objectively to the patient to say, here's your problem, here's the solution. And you can model all the way through to the end what it looks like. Tell me what you want to do. And that, because of AI and how I've integrated it from the foundations of clinical interpretation and diagnosis to the patient output, it makes case acceptance of complex treatment plans pretty easy.
Let me ask you this. On the trust basis, do you find that patients are becoming more trusting of that information because it's, let's say, agnostic, if you will? Whereas, a lot of patients think that maybe the dentist is selling them. They're being sold and they feel like, well, no, that's just them over exaggerating just to try to make some money here. With it being a computer program like that, having that lens, do you find that they're adopting more or feeling more comfortable with that opinion of AI?
I honestly don't see any doubt coming from patients on this. The trust factor is so high. As long as you set it up, that's the only thing I need to do is set up the relationship between me, them, and the software, and say that I'm going to use advanced software to help us interpret what's going on here. You're going to be able to see what I see, and then I'm going to get rid of anything that I disagree with. And
that's pretty interesting. You think about that, right? Like that we will be, and it says a lot about society in general as we're going into this massive AI tsunami that we're in right now. Everybody's using it for everything from medical advice to write my paper to do my dissertation, whatever it is.
They're already blindly trusting the AI over the human, which is funny because all that data is initially coming from humans.
Yeah, which I guess you could extrapolate that out to say that this may lead to better healthcare in general with implementation of that, right? Again, you're back on the preventative stuff. I still think there's a big threshold to get patients just into a clinic. So many just avoid until it's a problem. So I think there's a massive opportunity of like education, awareness, and things of that nature to try to get patients more comfortable with being in a dental practice. But it's very interesting to see that they are responding to this so positively, as if it's very binary. Like this is what it says is what I need to do.
Yeah, some other places that AI helps where I'm exploring that. So I'm a small office, right? Very small. It is not. 4 operatories, call it 1,400 square feet, 3 team members. We're open 2.5 days a week. So just run the numbers in your head, right? I don't have a huge marketing budget. I can't afford to have someone on my phones all day long. So I do have a front office AI agent that is on 24/7. So all of my after hours and overflow calls get filtered through AI. Do patients love it? Not always, right? They have some feedback for it, especially some of the, I would say our older patients. They know that it's a robot. They don't like it, but it gives me an intelligent interaction to then immediately reach out to those patients if I need to, or have my manager do that.
Do you think it's because AI is trying to pretend to be a human at that aspect? Like that maybe where they get hung up is like, we're okay with AI being a program to analyze information and process, but when it starts to pretend to be human, that's where I get uncomfortable. Do you think that that's part of the issue there?
I think so, and it's just not there. So I test this for companies, right? I use it, right? But I also test it, and I hear it, I listen to it, and when I call somebody, and I know it's an AI agent, I know how I react. So I think you're right that because it's trying to play a direct human role that has existed in our society now for forever, as long as any of us listening to this can remember, there is a resistance to some extent, but it still has value there for me, for sure.
I also think it's the age barrier thing you said before, because I do recall, like, you're calling into an airline or credit card company. It's not AI at the time. It was just a set protocol of kind of decision tree, if then, right? Which is the most maddening thing in the world when you're actually trying to ask a question. And so I think that has kind of trickled down or been pulled through for probably, 40 and up, especially, to where it's like, I have cussed at the phone and the robot many, many times. Please respond again. I did not understand your answer. And it's like, yeah, I said F you is what I said, right? But I think that I think that's changing. I think, I think what a point Blake made earlier, you made, where it's the younger generations are going to be fine with it because they know they're going to get the answer they want. They're going to get a quicker response. And I find a lot of younger people don't even necessarily want to talk to a human, for better or worse, which is another aspect of it.
And I think that might be easier in adoption. To your point, Shane, is, a lot of companies have outsourced their customer service internationally. And sometimes there's a language barrier, right? There's a little bit of a communication breakdown, an issue there.
He's talking about Delta.
Yeah. Well, like most have outsourced. I think the Philippines acts as a big customer service resource center for a lot of different verticals. And it happens sometimes, extremely nice culture, very considerate and empathetic in a call. I've always experienced that. But there sometimes is, again, just a communication breakdown. But with AI, it's definitely getting better. And as they evolve, they'll continuously be more efficient and effective. But I think that's where people have the issue, and the adoption is not as high as we're seeing right now. But in 2 years from now, I don't think this will be a concern at all. And again, because the models will be better, but two, we will be numb and desensitized to it much more. And it's normalized in our society.
Well, the models are going to be better next week, but your point of adoption may be 2 years, right? To where we trust them. So Dr. Burr, I got a question for you. So you have a smaller private practice, but you've been in the DSO world. My assumption is that for, your AI notes, your charting, all of these things, right? Identification and notes back to patient, that DSOs are actually probably going to be more receptive to that in many ways than, let's say, a lot of private practice. You're always going to have your innovators who jump in early. Is that accurate, or am I way off?
Well, yes and no. So a forward-thinking private practitioner can pull the trigger on a product and get it implemented. Most of these AI companies now can implement products in less than a week, right? You can get it installed, or whatever needs to happen to the computer system in your practice. You can be up and running with a new solution in a few days. And you can make that decision today as the owner of a small group or single office practice. And there are a lot of doctors doing that. Not all, right? There are a lot, though. The DSOs take longer to implement because they have to go through their vetting process. But when they adopt it, it is more holistic in terms of what they want out of it. Because what this is allowing us to do now, which we've never had the ability to standardize clinical expectations across a platform, right? It has been too hard. So even just taking something as as cut and dry as probing patients for their periodontal conditions once a year in a full mouth probe, meaning you're marking not just pocket depths, but all of the other measurements that are required. That was so hard to manage when you have disparate practice management servers across 10 or 20 or 200 or 1,500 offices, and not really be able to see how well your providers are doing that. Just if they're doing it at all, yes or no, right? Just that binary decision was not attainable information. And even if it was through some serious data mining on the biggest DSOs to get that information, you had no ability to transparently convey that, and then no structure to hold people accountable for standards of care. We have it now. We can do it so much easier, and that's really cool. And so DSOs do gravitate towards that because DSOs elevate the standard of care, right? There's no question there. Scanners, intraoral scanners would not be where it's at today had DSOs 15 years ago not said, we're doing this.
It's true.
3D printing, right? Chairside milling, cone beam adoption, AI, and you just look at the AI X-ray analysis. Because of what DSOs are doing and how they're adopting, it's pulling the private practice doctors into the momentum that's taking that tsunami somewhere, and they have to follow because it's just too good and too valuable for patient interaction.
Do you think that the threshold slowing down adoption is more mindset or cost of implementation? Because from my understanding, it's not very expensive necessarily when you look at, what it costs to buy a cone beam or a mill or anything like that.
Or hire an extra employee.
This seems very palatable to adopt. So is really the deterrent just the mindset change? Is that where you get the most resistance in scaling into this AI type practice model?
Two ideas there, or two thoughts, observations. So doctors and hygienists, they have, because of their diploma and license, there's a barrier. Adoption requires their buy-in. You can force it from the top down of a DSO and say, do this, but ultimately they don't have to. And you really can't fire, if doctors aren't adopting it en masse, you can't go and fire, to make an example, of a doctor that just says, I'm not doing this, right? You can't do it.
Sure.
So yes, you do have doctors who look at AI image analysis and say, well, there's too many false positives for my liking, and so I'm going to not use this. That happens. You have doctors or hygienists who say, yeah, it missed one or two of my pocket depth readings on this voice charting, and so I'm not going to do it. And so you do have some adoption hesitation there, just because it's not perfect and it's changed, right? It's uncomfortable. The growth that's required to think differently about how you've interacted with patients your whole life and how vulnerable that might make you, and that you might have missed something for the last 20 years, or, hey, you haven't been charting right your entire career as a hygienist. How does that make you feel? Not great, right? But again, once they see it and understand how to interact with the patient through it, I don't see that adoption as being an issue. Your other point around the cost, you're right that it pales in comparison to the hardware cost of a cone beam. But a cone beam is a capital expense, not an operational expense month over month. So there is a differentiation there in how we think about it. And dental practices and DSOs have never had a significant line item for software in the office. And most AI isn't, it's mostly additive currently. The only position you can eliminate from an office currently through AI is if you have an extra treatment coordinator or phone receptionist. That's kind of the only thing that's actually on the table to eliminate, to arbitrate the cost of AI with operational expense.
Makes sense.
And even a year ago, there's no, at least that I know of, there's no DSO or private practice who built a $3,000 or $4,000 line item into their P&L budget for AI software solutions. So it's all new cost that hasn't been figured into the P&L. So when you consider a phone agent, insurance, verification and claims management, or billing and revenue cycle management, or patient interaction, or X-ray analysis, or voice, conversation and dictation integration, like those just are things that are incredibly additive to the business and very valuable, but they haven't been figured into the budget in the industry at large. So there is some hesitation there when you say, I'm going to be spending $2,500 a year per location through my different AI solutions, roll that out over 12 months times 100 locations. Is this really going to drive that much top line revenue? And the answer is probably not right off the top, because there's so many other factors that go into top line revenue, right? So you just see this hesitation because of the financial model that we're trying to break.
I wonder if there's a niche for somebody kind of what you're doing, de novo practices built around AI to scale even greater, as opposed to just adding and seeing it from that. It's probably not there yet to fully do that in a kind of a robust way. But do you see that happening where you start seeing practices being built around AI and how efficient a practice can be and the savings compared to regular practice?
Yeah, well, look, I hope that's what I've done, right? I hope that's what I'm doing. It's not easy, I'll tell you that. But one front office person and 2 part-time dental assistants, no hygienist. That's the model, right? Proactive dental care built around AI. I'm seeing if it works.
Yeah.
So so let's say, you're able to figure this out fully. I would assume like the scalability of practice 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, like the scalability there would have to be much easier. The less people you get involved, honestly, it should be easier.
I think so. That's really what I'm hoping to prove out over the coming years.
Yeah. No, that it really is an interesting concept. I saw something similar in the early years of the no front desk in Madrid, Spain, and it's a really nice clinic downtown Madrid, and they use a tablet for checking in, and it was not using necessarily AI, but it was modernized in a digitized platform. I think you booked through Facebook and you checked in with Facebook and all that right there. And I think that's where finding what you're doing is pioneering a new lean model that can still deliver top care, but can operate with a smaller footprint. But I kind of want to shift gears for those that are listening that are, let's say, being skeptical of AI right now. Because you're a tester, you're seeing warts and all. What's the worst AI experience that you've had in testing, or experience that you've had that said, okay, this is as bad as days get? And because you're a tester, you're going to see it more than most, because once it's through your threshold, then it gets rolled out to the general audience. But what would be your kind of nightmare or worst case scenario?
Or funny
AI?
Yeah, well, so for example, sometimes the notes, like when it listens to the conversation, right? So the AI that's listening to the conversation and then compiling a note, it has some rules. But sometimes, and I'll tell patients, I record our conversations because it helps me generate our notes. It captures your conversation with me to make sure that I have the best records possible. And patients are totally fine with it. And they know ahead of time when I have them sign their disclosures and new patient paperwork that I'm using this. So it's not a surprise to them. But there have been a couple times where I've shown patients, like, here, watch this. I'm going to tabulate our conversation. And it hallucinates and has some, it might pick up some of the words from the song on the music. And this was earlier. And then there's some pretty inappropriate things that came through that
those are the things I want to see.
Yeah, it's like, it's really inappropriate stuff. And I'm like, we got to fix this, guys. So the patient looks at it and is like, well, we never said that. I'm like, you're very right. We never said anything about that.
Blake, is that why all my text messages from you have so many, it says duck all the time? Duck you, duck this. I don't understand.
I mean, like literally the patient's eyes are wide open. You're like, yeah, look, we're just trying this out.
So, dumb question here, and it's something I've been thinking about, is what is the hardware you're using for dictation? Is your laptop just beside you, or do you mic up to get a better audio capture? What is your hardware for that?
So I have it's the size of a quarter. It sits just behind the patient and me. And so for all of our conversation, that's what I use. and it's totally portable. It's got a magnetic clip. The only time I'll actually have it on me is when you're perio charting specifically, because it needs really clear audio for the numbers and like the commands that are specific to the program.
Yeah, because you're speaking into the patient's face when you're doing that, right? I mean, you're not.
So I'll put it on right here, just through on my collar as I'm charting, perio probing specifically. But then every other time it's just behind the patient, out of sight, out of mind, and then my computer's just running off on the side, and it's totally out of the view of what we're doing.
The reason why I ask is because I kind of in dental I started, I guess you would say, in a lot of ways of live streaming procedures and stuff like that. And that was the hardest thing to do, is get the audio. Put a mic on their scrubs and you're hearing ruffle, you're brushing up against something, you're constantly hearing background noise, or the dental operatory, the music, to your point, the drills, everything, there's so much ambient noise. It was very hard to capture clearly. And that's where, the models are getting much better at this capture. Just even like with one of these web chats or something, you notice, background noise, you don't hear that as much in a Teams call or anything. But I was definitely interested to see, like, what is this hardware that is achieving this? How are we setting it up? So it's interesting to see. It's just a lapel mic. That's it. And it's getting
super low budget, low cost. It's just not even, and I don't think about it. The devs that work with the group that I use for this use case have done such a great job at that. And I don't think about it. I really don't.
Yeah, it's got to be the software. The AI is getting, editing software, things like that. Like, it's recognizing ambient versus it's gotten. I mean, just in the last 6 months, it's gotten outstanding. So, I don't think that's going to get. I think that'll just get better and better and better as it gets more and more data. Let's talk about the future of what you can share. There's going to be certain things you just can't talk about because they're working on them right now. But what's something that would maybe surprise someone where you think AI will integrate next into a dental practice?
Well, what I hope we see, and I've seen some, there's like whispers of this, and there's some people prototyping this, but just like you can now interact with ChatGPT or Gemini or whoever you're, basically as a personal assistant for the most part. If I can have AI interface with all of my clinical software and give me not just a recap of the day, a recap of each patient, health history, like it can read everything from the practice management and give me relevant information, everything from prior appointments, relevant information, prior conversations with the patient that were recorded, relevant information, and then help me understand how to convey that into future care for this patient. So right now we're totally limited by the fact that we have these practice management softwares that are, for the most part, antiquated. Now, cloud-based management softwares are here. There are a couple that are better than others. I think that integration with AI is going to determine how quickly that type of interaction that I just described actually occurs. So, anyway, that's what I see. And
you see, there's two major ones out there. I won't even say their names, right? Do you see them playing ball?
I mean, in terms of like playing ball with AI, for sure. I know they're headed
open, probably not an open market situation. They've never been too amenable to that.
Yeah, I don't know. I
think that's a challenge. I think a lot of these bigger softwares are tough to open up to build bridges with other third-party solutions. A lot of them, they want to try to make it in-house, and that's what makes the adoption rate so slow for them, their implementation. And I think that they're kind of being forced into that because we're in the era of software explosion. The rate that you can build something now versus just 2 years ago is, leaps and bounds. And so, you look at ChatGPT getting to roll out its app store where you can build your software fully in ChatGPT and then download the app through there and monetize and everything else. That now your average Joe who's just got a crazy idea can build a solution. And so I think the companies that adopt that and become more open will be more successful because we're now in this open source development game or era that you're going to see very niche solutions that solve one problem but it's a major issue, and they're going to just focus on that, and it's going to be on these companies to adopt that in or try to build their own.
I think the single point solution is sexy right now, but it won't last. So
Yeah.
At some point you'll have to have some size in dentistry. So there are some market players that just have a head start because they're in 50,000 dental offices today. And as long as they get it right, within a margin of error, they're going to just continue there. And the single point solutions on any single problem in dentistry, even though you can build it, like you'll have some minor adoption, and you don't need a ton of adoption to make a single developer / solution successful. But I do think that there will have to be some open level of integration because of what you just said. I think AI will democratize what has historically been pretty closed off in dentistry. I don't think it'll be allowed to survive because the doctors of tomorrow, and part of this goes into how I think the DSO world will evolve. The doctor that wants to own a practice tomorrow won't stand for a closed system.
Yeah. So, and that's the thing you see online a lot is just like, this doesn't integrate with that. I mean, there's a lot of great solutions that die just because they couldn't get that bridge built with company Y or X, and I think that culture is changing, and we're going to have to find ways to be more synergistic if the clinician's life is going to improve. With all these solutions are meant to improve either your profitability, your efficiency, whatever it may be. And the irony of it all is all these solutions are created, and now you've got 10 different softwares you have to use in your practice versus just one ecosystem that everything lives within.
Yeah.
So it kind of is counterproductive to what your goal is, which is just to be more efficient at the end of the day.
Gone are the days of Sarah locking everybody out, right?
Yeah. The question will be, does the practice management remain central, or does an AI interface now become central and practice management just becomes like health history, storage and documentation and note documentation and some records documentation, but I have to integrate with my 3D imaging software, X-ray and intraoral wise, and like there's no good solution out there now. I've got to integrate with all of my communication from a medical legal perspective, right? So if I've had, a solution texting my patients and a solution marketing to my patients and a solution sending forms to my patients and recording my phone calls to patients, all that becomes discoverable. So it's got to be pretty easy to amass together. And I don't know that that's in a practice management software.
Yeah.
Long term, it might
Blake,
be.
that's some of the stuff you're working on right now. So keep it going, buddy.
Yeah.
I love to learn things as they become new trends, right? So I've been late at night, as the kids say, vibe coding, playing around with it stuff. And I was doing a little pilot project with Shannon, building like a practice management software that was AI integrated and stuff. And with it being like an open source model, you look at some of these business models, they can be effective of, I'll give you the razor so I can sell you the razor blades. And I think so much of dentistry has been about, we want to make the most amount of possible on the razor. And then a year from now, you won't be able to find the right razor blade for it. And so it's just clunky. And so I think you're dead on a overall large shell that's AI that these things live within may be the more viable pathway than the other way around. But it's going to be interesting to see how fast we move in this space, and especially, again, the titans of industry for this space. They're having the conversations, they're looking at it, but you've got all this old code and infrastructure that it's quite often much more clunky to remodel the house than it is to start from scratch and build the house from the ground up. And I think that's probably the challenge a lot of these days.
Cloud-based platforms were initially created before AI was a thing. So your most advanced cloud-based platforms, I mean, they might say that they had AI as a concept, but there's no way that 5 years ago or 10 years ago when they were whiteboarding this out that they thought, hey, in 2025, here's what AI is going to look like. So let's build to integrate with that. And so that just kind of goes back to why I felt like last year was really this seminal moment for dental practice where we can financially and viability wise practice differently, because the tools are all here now. Now, I'm not in the AI practice management software business, so I don't know if we're there yet for that. But in terms of patient care, I think we are.
Yeah, no, that's amazing.
Now, Dr. Burr, I actually have a question for you. Is there anything in your personal life from an AI perspective, whether it's an app or a feature of an app that you use on a regular basis that's maybe made your life easier in some way, maybe it's more fun? I like learning about this stuff because Blake shares stuff with me all the time.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. Number one, it still surprises me when I talk about ChatGPT and people don't know what it is. There are still some people that are like, "What are you talking about? I don't get it."
Name names.
Right? And I'm like, you guys, I went back to my earliest chat with ChatGPT 3.5 or 4 years ago, and anyway, my wife and I were talking about it, and it was pretty cool. And I look at it today. So just this morning, before I got to do anything, I had to do some work on my bike, my mountain bike. So I'm a mountain biker, and I'm not a mechanic. Like, mechanical work on my mountain bike is not something that I have gone to school for. I've never been trained on it, but sure enough, I can snap pictures and just walk through a pretty complex, expensive piece of equipment and solve a problem. And I do that every day because my whole family mountain bikes get broken all the time. Maintenance on those when you take it to the shop is expensive, right? It's a 4-figure, maybe 5-figure savings for me to do the maintenance myself over the course of a year on 5 different mountain bikes for my family. And like, that's been helpful.
Yeah. I actually, a buddy of mine went out on his boat, first time getting it out for the season, right? Drop it in the water. We got everything in the water ready to go, ready to have a good night on the lake. And we fire up the boat and, what's going on? And basically looks like chocolate milk exploded all over the engine. And we thought, it didn't get winterized, but we didn't know, right? We're not mechanics. Took a picture of it, which ChatGPT said, "Hey, what's going on here? What do you think?" It was like, it was not winterized properly, this and that. And then 2 days, we had told his dad, it was his dad's boat. And he's like, he took it back to the mechanic and everything. And 2 days later, he's like, "Yeah, they didn't winterize it right." And it was like, wow, that's pretty incredible. And that was his kind of a aha moment, his dad's moment of like, I got to try this thing out. But yeah, it's definitely, I always tell people it's glorified Google. It's just much more in detail than Google. When we Google things, it was still to try to find an answer to a solution, but you had to sift through pages and pages and maybe get that answer. Now it's just to the point. But with that, I kind of want to stay on the future of dentistry and throw a crazy idea out at you is, let's say not 2 or 3 years from now, but maybe 10 years from now. Do you think that an Optimus bot, or, we're getting into automation, right? And bots and these models are improving. They're going to replace certain labor markets with actual robots. Do you see that ever entering into the dental space? Do you ever see one day maybe there's a bot chairside assisting you?
I'm not as optimistic about that, I'll be honest. I don't, and if it happens, I don't know that it actually replaces the human. If you think about what a dental assistant does, right? They interact with the patient. They look ahead at what's needed. They're able to interact with the doctor and have instruments and hand it very precisely. They're managing suction in a patient's mouth, and they're just doing a lot. And the precision is very fine. So I just don't know that, like, financially it would make sense for a company to develop that, honestly. Like the level of precision and complexity to replace the dental assistant who, I mean, dental assistants are worth every single dollar, but, call it 20, 25, 26, 28, whatever labor market you're in, $30 an hour. I mean, the cost for me to replace a DA with every operatory with something that can do that for me has got to be pretty astronomical, so maybe sometime in the future. I don't know. I'm not there. I'm not there on.
You're going
to ones in school. School. It's okay.
The dental assistant is then going to have to get paid 2x to learn how to maintain that robot, interact and prompt the AI, because doctors. So yeah, I could see that. Now, where I could see something that's more feasible, and I think it's further and further. Take your Yomi robot, place it in implants, tie that with the treatment plan. You ever see it? And then theoretically, right, that it could implement that clinically, but it would still need the oversight of a doctor. And I don't think most people would be still fully comfortable with that, because at least with the Yomi right now, you've got the handpiece in your hand. It's just preventing you from going too deep or going off too far.
Well, it was like what, 3 or 4 years
you can
ago.
go right now, depending on where you live, and get whitening done by a non-dentist in the mall, right, or at next door to the Sally's Beauty Supply, and people are okay with that. I just can't fathom that someone's going to go walk into the robot implant doctor and that's not affiliated with a dental office, that doesn't have doctor oversight. Like the fear that robots are going to replace the dentist or the dental assistant, I don't know that I'll see that in my career. If I'm wrong, I'll be the first to adopt it. Like if it's really there and it's really, really good, I'll do it, right? Because it's got to be better for patients.
I think one of the best applications that could possibly happen from the integration of AI in practices is, and I don't know if we'll ever get to this point because they've tried this for insurances and things like that, where every medical doctor, every dentist is entering the prescriptions, right? And now AI is saying, these are the concerns. These are the, oh crap, contraindication here. You got overlapping medicines. And that could save lives and make a big difference too.
There's that, and then there's just the interpretation of all of the risk that we can't, like I can't fathom, even with what I'm doing today, I can't fathom 5 years from now what my patients' home habits are going to look like, how that's going to impact the dentistry, how good my dentistry actually was, right? Like I think I do great dentistry, but I don't actually know, right? I don't have a 30 or 40 year track record on each patient to then go back and say, hey, I placed this crown 40 years ago, and so this is what my next crown is going to do. We're never going to be able to practice that way until AI starts to just amass all of this information, all of the risk factors, all of the doctor factors, all of the, what the temperature was like outside your office that day and the humidity level and the conditions in the office and which assistant you had and what their proficiency level was, to then say, like, this is actually the best treatment plan for this patient today. And this is how you have to deliver it under these conditions. Like at some point, we're going to have more information like that, and that will actually be more beneficial for patients' long-term health, I think.
And I think we're going to have consumer adoption. So you're adopting it as a clinician and implementing it in. But I think at the same time, this normalization of AI as a personal assistant, as a mentor, as a coach. Now I think ChatGPT talked about the not safe for work stuff that they're going to be rolling out. It's going to be a companion and all these other things, right? I think we're going to get to a point where there's going to be a health coach for people have an appetite to say, hey, look, brush your teeth today. Hey, you haven't brushed yet. Check in, knock this out. Hey, it's been 2 weeks and you still haven't done any cardio. Get together. And I want to say HHS secretary has been kind of vocalizing this a little bit too on like the teching app and doing app health and stuff like that for consumers. So I think that we're going to meet in the middle somewhere at some point where health gets better too, because there's more accountability, because they have this type of health coach. And I think that will also come with time, that people will seek that, because it's really just about, I need a workout buddy to hold me accountable, and hey, are you going to come today or not? And I think AI will supplement that and hopefully push people into a better health realm, to being more accountable to themselves, because they typically are not. I think as a society, we're not very good about keeping on top of our own health.
Yeah.
And to kind of leverage that point, a lot of the stuff I hear, Dr. Burr, you're saying, you see this more as an enhancer and as a tool, not as a replacement of anybody or anything.
The day when patients are able to, overcome biology, then sure, it might replace the dentist, right? Like we see all the headlines, like no more dentists because scientists have found a way to regrow teeth. I've been seeing that for 20 years, and it's probably been going on for more than that. I'm just not that old. I haven't been following dentistry for more than 20 years. So like
my prediction on that, I hope it works, because I think it doesn't say when the tooth is going to stop growing. So I think it's even better for dentists. They're have to keep it to get shaved down, get a new crown on.
At some point, who's going to implant it into the bone, and who's going to monitor the growth, and who's going to guide it? Like it's not an easy thing. But I think even from like periodontal disease, right? Biofilm grows over time. Even if you're brushing, even if you're rinsing, even if you're flossing, you have to still go see the dentist to physically remove biofilm. The same way that lime scale builds up on your shower head, you just have to clean it, right? You have to clean it. So you're gonna have to still go and like get your teeth scraped by a metal instrument at some point in your life. It might be every 4 months or every 8 months or 2 years, because you're so optimized on how you manage your biofilm and your oral flora. But it's the common biology causes of what happens in here and happens through our bodies isn't changing with AI. It'll just get optimized. Like, we'll be more healthy as humans, but we're not changing our interaction with biology and like the core principles of nature that exist.
Let me ask you this, because some people that might be listening, they want to understand your mindset. You've obviously fully embraced this and no looking back. What influencers pushed you into this direction? What motivated you? Are there people that you're following that are good, whether they're dental or non-dental, leading the way in AI, that are helping you come to this type of mindset that you're in?
Really, it was, I wouldn't point to any single person. It actually was just more through some of the industry relationships I gained and have gained along the way as I've sat and talked at the executive level with people around what's possible. And this idea that I just have always wanted to see a dental practice not have to thrive on doing fillings and crowns all day to help a patient or help the financial health of the practice allow them to stay open, right? I just hate that that's how dentistry lives right now. And I've always hated that.
No, it's really good. That's a disruptor mindset though. So, questioning the status quo and saying it can be different. I think it's very unique, and I applaud you for it, because you see the opportunity, you just don't see the adoption at the rate you would think yet, but we're getting there.
Well,
all right, to close this out. Oh, go ahead, Dr. Burr.
It's not financially viable yet, right? When I look at, like, I was just talking to my daughter the other day, and we were just talking about how did my workday go? And it dawned on me that I did a filling on a patient. It was the first filling I had done in a month, maybe 2, because I just am so proactive on the remineralization technologies that are out there and the prevention techniques. I just don't do them that often, even though I still see patients every day. And again, that doesn't mean that I don't think it's going to be a necessary skill that doctors have, but it was a different day for me to all of a sudden have to do a filling. Yeah. Right. But Gal, the financial balance of this has been the hardest part of my practice for sure, is figuring out how to like make this work, because it doesn't fit under a traditional dental practice mindset.
Yeah, it makes sense.
All right, guys, to close this out, because we're coming up on already 47 minutes already, I got a off the wall question, nothing to do with AI at all, but we have seen a huge integration of Zen and other nicotine type pouches out there on the market. And as a clinician, I've asked a number of clinicians and I have gotten no consensus, right, at all. What is your opinion on them? Are they dangerous? Obviously, you probably won't encourage anybody to do it. You should just jump into an addictive substance. But do you see any negatives, positives? Hey, if you're going to do this, I'd rather you do it over something else. What's your viewpoint on that? Because they become really big lately.
Yeah, so this is definitely out of left field. We all have our things that are unhealthy, right? I don't know how healthy or unhealthy nicotine patches or Zen or any of those are. We don't have a consensus on it. We probably won't for a while. I think it's certainly better than the traditional nicotine delivery systems like smoking. So I would say I'm all for it if it means you're not doing that. If it helps you operate in life in a way that is better and you enjoy what you're doing, and this is an additive to that, by all means do it. Just be aware that nicotine is still a vasoconstrictor and it's going to affect healing and what happens in your mouth. So if you're willing to put in more work, if you need an implant or if you have gum disease and we've got to deal with, limited blood flow, like just be aware that this is the thing. And so I'll help you manage it, but do it if you need to do it, or if you want to do it. I don't like that. That's my opinion on it. Really, it is.
So I'm going to summarize it in the way that I want it said. Is I'm going to tell my wife, a dentist said today I can do Zen. Period.
Okay. So I have a partner in my practice. He's not a partner in the actual practice, but we work together. He shares the space with me, and he does advanced implant dentistry specifically. and he's using Zen all day. And like, so yes, there's a dentist that I know that does it all day long, and I practice right next to him. And so, and he knows the science as much as it's out there in terms of how it impacts implants, and he'll be upfront with patients about it. So I appreciate that about him. And I would just say, like, you take your health into your own hands, make sure you've asked the questions that you need to ask, run it through your AI health model. And like, if it conforms with your worldview and how you want to manage your health, then by all means do it. And just let's try. The only thing I would say towards anything that we ingest or that we're bringing into our body is, let's not allow it to take away our choice of better health.
Yeah.
Through addiction or like compulsive use that we can't manage.
So
Well
Sean,
said.
quit eating your Chick-fil-A while you're slamming white monsters in 3 Zen pouches at the
Whoa.
street.
Whoa. All right.
Exactly.
Do you have another camera in here or something? No, I appreciate that. And Blake, I can guarantee you that clip is going to do very well on social media.
Everybody wants to know.
Algorithms. Well, Dr. Burr, thank you for joining us today. If somebody wants to get in touch with you, what is the best way for them to do that?
So LinkedIn will have my email. It'll have my cell phone number, right? I take calls all day, but that's probably the best way to do it.
All right. Well, hey, really appreciate you again teaching us a little bit about what you're doing right now with AI integrations, talking about the future, and obviously your advice on Zen here. Not saying you're promoting it, but hey, honey, maybe it's not so bad. So, guys, we'll catch you on the next All In Practice Growth podcast.
Thanks for listening to the All In Podcast. See you next time.